My parents hid what my uncle did by locking up my sister. When I spoke up, my mom made me out to be a liar. 6 years later, those lost recordings were played in court, and everyone heard the truth. Being the youngest kid, I learned early how to play dumb. Always pretending I didn't notice things I absolutely did. I was 11. Alyssa, my sister, was 14 the first time I heard her get punished. I was in my room right next to hers when I heard a crash. All her stuff was thrown to the floor. "You're an effing disgrace," Mom screamed before slamming the door. I didn't want to push, so I just texted her to ask if she was okay. To my surprise, Alyssa replied. She asked me to come in. When I did, my heart nearly stopped. The bed beneath her was streaked with blood, and her arms were covered in fresh cuts. I rushed to the bathroom, grabbed tissue, and came back while she cried. "Mom found out. I didn't mean for her to know," she sobbed. I didn't know what to say. I just kept quiet and tried to stop the bleeding. When I finished, she whispered thanks and asked if I'd sleep next to her that night. I said yes, not knowing it'd be one of the last times I'd ever get to. Because the next morning, I woke up to the sound of Dad beating her with a black leather whip. "How dare you drag your little sister into this?" he yelled, then shoved me out of the room. I sat on the stairs, listening to what sounded like straight-up torture. A few minutes later, Mom walked past me. I thought she'd tell him to stop. Maybe hug me. But she just said don't feel bad for her. She deserves it. Then told me to come eat pancakes like nothing happened. On the bus to school, I texted Alyssa to check in. She didn't even open it. When school ended, I raced home. But she was gone. And when I turned around, Mom was standing there with her arms crossed. She needed serious help, she said in a quiet voice. So we sent her to a facility. I was still young and naive enough to believe she meant well. So I went on with life like everything was normal. 3 months later, Alyssa came home. I hadn't realized how much I missed her till I saw her again. I ran to hug her. She froze. Her eyes were blank, her body stiff. She used to light up when she saw me. Now, she barely looked human. Her face had no color. She looked painfully thin. Dad led her to her room, and she went straight to bed. Every night, I'd press my ear to the wall to hear if she was okay. But there was nothing. Not a sound. After a week, I bought her favorite candy, Trolley sour crawlers, and snuck into her room. For the first time, I saw a flicker of a smile. Then Mom barged in. "You're not supposed to talk to your sister," she shouted, snatched the candy and slammed the door. She dragged me to dinner like nothing happened. Mid-meal, she broke the silence. "She's been diagnosed as violent and manipulative. If you love her, stay away." I didn't know what to think. Alyssa looked so messed up. Maybe they were right. But still, I was the youngest, and I noticed things others didn't. One night, Mom caught me crying into my pillow. She raised her hand to hit me until Alyssa walked in and said, "It was my fault." I made her cry. I heard the beating meant for me through the wall. Another time, I was upset because our hamster died. Dad saw me sulking and snapped. "Oh, you want to cry? Let me give you something to cry about." He reached for the black whip. But Alyssa ran in, yelling, "It's my fault." I told her it was okay to be sad. And yeah, you can guess what happened next. This pattern kept repeating. Anytime I messed up or showed emotion, Alyssa took the blame. It made no sense. They said she was violent and manipulative. But all I saw was her taking hits for me. Then, one night, it all clicked. I was digging under my bed for an old diary when I found hers. Alyssa's. Most pages were ripped out. But one entry remained. It was dated a week before Mom caught her self-harming. Mom caught Uncle Glenn in my room again. She said if I told anyone, she'd let him start visiting Lena instead. Maybe if I'm broken enough. They'll send me away and I won't be able to tell. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why she was sent away. Why she wasn't allowed near me. She was trying to protect me. From the start. Those cuts weren't a cry for help. They were her way out to make herself too unstable to be around me. To keep Uncle Glenn away. She was sacrificing herself so I wouldn't have to go through what she did. I sat on my floor, holding that diary entry, hands shaking. Uncle Glenn. Just his name made me sick. He was Mom's brother. He'd come by for Sunday dinners with those nasty butterscotch candies. He laughed weird, hugged too long. I never questioned why Alyssa always had an excuse to disappear when he showed up. Until now, I needed to talk to her right now. I ran to her room and knocked. But she didn't answer. I tried the handle, but it was locked. I leaned in and whispered through the door that I'd found her diary, that I knew about Uncle Glenn. Silence. So long I thought maybe she was asleep. Then I heard slow, heavy footsteps, and the lock clicking. But the door never opened. Instead, I heard her slide down against it. When I pressed my ear to the wood, I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. I told her I was sorry, that I wanted to help. Nothing. Just more silence, and the sound of her walking away. A minute later, the bathroom door slammed shut. I stayed sitting outside her room for nearly an hour, just waiting. Mom found me there when she came up to call us for dinner. She asked what I was doing, and I lied, said I dropped an earring. She stared at me for a second too long. then told me to wash my hands and come down. At dinner, Alyssa's seat was empty. Dad said she wasn't feeling well. Mom just nodded and passed the green beans like nothing was off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every time Uncle Glenn had been over. How Alyssa would suddenly have to go to a friend's house or claim she had urgent homework. How she wore huge hoodies, even in summer. How she flinched when any grown man got too close. How I hadn't seen it. Then the next morning, over breakfast, my parents dropped a bomb. Uncle Glenn was getting divorced and needed a place to stay. He'd be moving into our guest room next week. I dropped my spoon straight into my cereal. I looked at Alyssa, her face had gone completely pale. Her hands shook so hard, she couldn't even hold her glass of juice. Mom noticed, and her tone turned sharp. She told Alyssa to stop being so dramatic, that family helps family. Alyssa opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Then she got up and left the table. Dad yelled after her, calling it disrespectful. But she was already gone. I found her in the bathroom, throwing up. I held her hair back while she leaned over the toilet, her body shaking. When she was done, she just sat on the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. She looked so small. I wanted to say something, anything to make it better. But what could I say? That it'd be okay? We both knew that was a lie. In the next few days, Alyssa started having what our parents called episodes. She'd be fine 1 minute, then suddenly gasping for air at dinner. Or she'd be watching TV and burst into tears. One night, I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m. All the knives lined up on the counter, just staring at them. Each time, our parents would just roll their eyes and mutter about her attention-seeking or manipulation. I tried going to Mrs. Annika, the school guidance counselor. I sat down during lunch and started telling her about Uncle Glenn and Alyssa and the facility. But she cut me off. She said my parents had already warned her I might show up saying strange things. They claimed Alyssa had a history of making me lie for her. She gave me this pitying look and said she understood how hard it must be to have a sibling with mental illness. I walked out of her office like I'd been slapped. My parents had thought of everything. They built this story, piece by piece, to make sure no one would believe us if we tried to speak up. That night, I woke up and found Alyssa curled up on my floor. She'd brought her pillow and blanket and made a little nest by the closet. I asked why, and she just said she couldn't sleep alone. Not with him coming. I told her she could sleep in my bed, but she shook her head. The floor was fine, she just wanted to be near me. That became our new routine. Every night, she'd sneak in once our parents were asleep. Every morning, she'd sneak back to her room before they woke up. It lasted about a week. Then one morning, Mom caught her leaving. The yelling started immediately. How dare Alyssa manipulate me like that? How dare she drag me into her delusions? Didn't she realize she was scaring me? Then I saw it, a new lock on my door. One that locked from the outside. Mom clicked it shut while I was still inside. She said it was for my own good, to keep Alyssa from bothering me. The sound of that lock shutting made my chest tighten with panic. Uncle Glenn moved in the following Tuesday. 2 suitcases, and that same creepy smile. At dinner, he sat next to me, his knee bumping mine under the table. Every time he did it, I saw Alyssa's jaw clench tighter. She didn't eat, just moved food around her plate, eyes locked on him like she was tracking a snake. The first time he offered to help with my homework, she snapped. I was at the kitchen table struggling with algebra when he sat beside me. He barely said hello when pounding erupted from upstairs. Alyssa, locked in her room, banging on the door so hard it shook the house. Mom ran up, yelling about property damage. Dad grabbed the whip. I wanted to scream that she was just trying to protect me, but Uncle Glenn's hand landed on my shoulder. Heavy, warm, and I couldn't speak. The beating lasted longer than usual. When it finally ended, the house went dead quiet. Uncle Glenn squeezed my shoulder and said something smug about teenage girls being dramatic. His breath reeked of cigarettes and coffee. I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up, just like Alyssa had. Things spiraled quickly after that. Uncle Glenn always had some reason to be near me, helping with schoolwork, watching TV, offering to give me rides. And every single time, Alyssa broke down. She shattered a window trying to escape her locked room. She screamed so loud, the neighbors called to check in. She stopped eating entirely for 3 days. And my parents? They doubled down on the punishments. They isolated her even more, put bars on her windows, took her phone, stripped her room of anything she could use to hurt herself or break stuff. They didn't just lock her away. They turned her room into a cell. But even then, she didn't give up. Every time Uncle Glenn came near me, she'd go off, screaming, fighting, trying to stop him. I started finding things stashed around the house. Notes in my backpack, never be alone with him. A whistle hidden in my pencil case. Tiny scraps of paper with hotline numbers shoved into my shoes. Even locked away, even crushed down. She was still trying to protect me. Then, I found the phone. It was this old flip phone, hidden inside a tampon box under the bathroom sink. When I turned it on, it was full of audio files. I played one. It was Uncle Glenn's voice, low, threatening, telling someone to be a good girl, saying no one would believe them anyway, saying to think about their little sister. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. This was it. This was real proof. I had to do something. But the second I stepped out of the bathroom, Mom was there. She held out her hand. She knew. I tried to bolt, but she grabbed my arm, snatched the phone, and smashed it against the wall. Bits of plastic flew everywhere. She said Alyssa was getting worse now, faking recordings to back up her lies. Didn't I see how sick she was? Didn't I understand she needed help? I wanted to scream that Mom was the sick one, but I just stood there, frozen, watching her sweep up the pieces of the only evidence we had. That night at dinner, they announced Alyssa was going back to the facility, this time for longer, maybe even for good. They'd found a place that specialized in girls like her. Uncle Glenn nodded, said it was the right call. I couldn't eat. I just stared at my plate, while they talked about my sister like she was some problem that needed solving. That night, I snuck downstairs and called Grandma. She didn't answer in time. Mom showed up before the second ring. She took the phone and calmly explained that I was struggling, making up stories just like Alyssa had taught me. I could hear Grandma's worried voice through the speaker. But she still agreed, said it must be so hard on my parents. Every exit I tried was blocked. Every adult I reached out to had already been warned. We were the crazy sisters, the liars. No one would believe us. We were stuck in this house with a monster, and Alyssa knew it too. I saw it in her eyes every time they let her out for meals. She was fading, moving like a ghost, thin, pale, silent, but she still kept herself between me and Uncle Glenn any chance she got. Still made sure we were never left alone. And then came the breaking point. It was a Thursday night. I was in my room doing homework when I heard the lock click. The door opened. Uncle Glenn walked in. He said Mom had asked him to check on me. My stomach dropped. I told him I was fine. Didn't need anything. He walked in anyway, shut the door behind him, sat on my bed, way too close. He started talking. Said it must be hard for me. Said Alyssa had filled my head with lies. That I must be confused. His hand landed on my knee. I flinched and pulled away. He laughed. That gross laugh. Said I was just like my sister, too dramatic, too sensitive. Then we heard it screaming. Not normal screaming. It was guttural, terrifying. He jumped up and ran out. I followed. Alyssa's door was open. She was on the floor, blood everywhere. She'd found something sharp. I never found out what, but she used it. Mom was on the phone. Dad was trying to stop the bleeding. Uncle Glenn stood there, frozen, and for the first time, he looked scared. I dropped beside her and pressed my hands over the wounds, just like I did that first time, trying to stop the bleeding. She looked up at me, barely there, and mouthed two words, flash drive. The ambulance showed up fast. They put her on a stretcher while my parents put on their concerned family act. I heard Mom telling the paramedics about Alyssa's self-harm history, how she'd escalated, how she was manipulative. But one paramedic, a younger woman, kept looking at Alyssa with this strange expression, like she saw something the others didn't. While everyone was distracted, I ran out to the backyard, to the old treehouse Dad built years ago. It was falling apart, but I climbed up anyway, splinters digging into my palms. I searched in the dark and found it, wrapped in plastic and duct tape, a flash drive. I shoved it in my pocket just as Mom started yelling my name. I climbed down and said I just needed air. She didn't press it, too focused on getting to the hospital. We all piled into the car, Uncle Glenn too, and drove off. At the hospital, they wouldn't let me see Alyssa. Said family only. Apparently, that didn't include me. So I sat in the waiting room with Uncle Glenn. He kept trying to talk to me. I stayed quiet. Flash drive in my pocket, burning. Hours passed. Then finally, a doctor came out. Alyssa was stable. They said Alyssa would need to stay under observation, maybe even be transferred to a psychiatric facility. My parents nodded, like they'd expected it, like they'd already planned it. Uncle Glenn placed his hand on my shoulder again. This time, I didn't even flinch. I didn't have the energy to. But then something happened. I wasn't expecting. A different doctor came in and asked to speak with my parents. Alone. They looked confused, but followed him out. That left me and Uncle Glenn alone in a waiting room. I could feel his eyes on me. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, but I stood up and walked to the bathroom without a word. Once inside, I locked the door and pulled out the flash drive. I needed to see what was on it, but I didn't have a computer, and my phone was still at home. So I stood there, holding this tiny piece of plastic that might save us, with no way to open it. When I came out, the waiting room was chaos. Police officers were talking to my parents. Mom was crying, saying there must be some mistake. Dad was red-faced, demanding to know what was going on. Uncle Glenn was gone. A female officer approached me. She introduced herself as Officer Riley. then asked if I was Lena. I nodded, and she crouched down to my level. She said Alyssa had shared some serious information, and they needed to ask me a few questions. My parents jumped in, saying I was confused, that Alyssa had filled my head with lies. But Officer Riley raised a hand to stop them. She said Alyssa had been very specific, that she'd kept records, that she'd been protecting me. Then she looked me right in the eyes, asked if I knew anything about that. I felt the flash drive in my pocket. This was the moment, the one that could change everything. But I looked at my parents, the fear in their eyes, the rage in their faces, and I froze. What if no one believed me? What if they took the flash drive and it disappeared like the phone? That's when I saw her, the paramedic with the kind eyes. She was talking to another officer, waving her hands as she spoke. I caught bits of it. Mandatory reporting. Signs of trauma. She said she'd made sure to get Alyssa alone in the ambulance. Meanwhile, my parents got louder, yelling about mental illness and manipulation, pulling out paperwork from the facility, saying Alyssa was dangerous. Officer Riley hesitated, and I made my choice. I walked up to her, pulled the flash drive from my pocket, and handed it over. I said Alyssa had hidden it from me, that it had proof, that Uncle Glenn had been hurting her, and my parents knew. The words spilled out of me, years of silence, pouring out all at once. My parents lunged for the flash drive, but the officer stepped between us. Mom screamed that I was lying, that Alyssa had brainwashed me. Dad shouted about rights and false accusations, but Officer Riley took the flash drive gently, like it was made of glass. We were all taken to the station. I rode in one car, my parents in another. They put me in a quiet room with soft chairs and a tissue box on the table. I told them everything. The first night I saw Alyssa cut, the beatings, the way they locked her up, the way Uncle Glenn moved in and took over, the way they made everyone think we were crazy. The detective listened carefully. Didn't interrupt. Just let me talk. When I finished, she told me I'd done the right thing, said Alyssa was brave, and that I was too. Later, I learned what happened in the ambulance. Alyssa had done it on purpose. Her injury wasn't just an escape. It was a calculated risk. She knew they'd have to take her to the hospital. Knew that during transport, she'd be alone with medical professionals for the first time in months. The paramedic who'd recognized the signs of abuse had been trained in trauma response. She'd seen enough victims to know the look in Alyssa's eyes. Alyssa had told her everything during that ride. About Uncle Glenn, the cover-up, the flash drive in the treehouse. The paramedic followed protocol, called her supervisor. The police got involved before we even reached the hospital. That flash drive, it had everything. Photos of her injuries taken in secret, audio of Uncle Glenn's threats, recordings of my parents acknowledging what was happening, medical records showing the lies they told doctors, even emails to the facility, talking about payments for intensive isolation therapy to break her down. Uncle Glenn was arrested at a motel 2 towns over, trying to skip. My parents were charged with child endangerment and conspiracy. The facility got shut down after an investigation. Alyssa and I were placed with our grandma. She cried when she found out what had really been happening, right under her nose. Alyssa spent a month in the hospital, then came home. To Grandma, to me, she was different, quieter, but her eyes started to come back to life. We chose to share a room this time, and every night I'd lie there listening to her breathing, knowing we were safe. She started real therapy, not the fake kind that tried to fix her. She ate again, she smiled again. Especially when I brought her trolley sour crawlers. The trial was tough, testifying against our own parents, seeing Uncle Glenn in court, reliving it all for strangers. But Officer Riley was there, and the paramedic. And our grandma holding our hands the whole time. She whispered that she believed us, had always believed us, would always believe us. All 3 were found guilty. Uncle Glenn got the longest sentence. My parents got less time, but they lost us forever. Some relatives took their side, said we'd ruined the family, said we made it all up. But others, they started coming forward too, sharing their own doubts, things they'd seen, things they ignored, things they now wished they hadn't. Alyssa graduated high school a year late, but she did it with honors. Then she went to college. Studied social work. She made it her mission to protect kids like us. I went a different route, but with the same goal in my heart. We never forgot the nights in that house, the fear, the silence, the way the walls felt like they were closing in, but we didn't let those nights define who we became. Sometimes I still think back to the very beginning. To that night I found her on the bed, arms covered in cuts. She was hurting herself, trying to make herself look damaged enough to be sent away, to keep Uncle Glenn from moving on to me. How every beating she took, every punishment she endured, was her standing between me and a monster. She was 15 years, carrying a weight that would have crushed most adults, and for the longest time she carried it alone, but not in the end. The same system that failed us early on eventually worked, because good people did what they were supposed to. That flash drive, small enough to lose, held the truth that set us free, and Alyssa's strength, Her sacrifice, her refusal to let him near me, even at the cost of everything. That's what saved both of us. We still have scars. Some you can see. Most you can't. Loud voices still make us jump. Locked doors still bring on panic. Trust takes time, but we made it. We're safe now, and every night in our own homes, we sleep knowing the monsters are locked away. And this time, the locks only work from the inside. Funny thing about being the youngest, about pretending not to notice things, is that sometimes you end up seeing more than anyone. And yeah, sometimes the truth is worse than anything you imagine. But sometimes, if you're lucky and brave and have a sister who'd give up everything to protect you, sometimes the truth is the thing that saves you. When the trial date was set, 6 months out, Grandma hired a lawyer, someone named Vanessa. She wore power pantsuits and had this voice that made you feel like she had your back, no matter what. She came to our house every week, went over our statements until I could repeat mine in my sleep. Living with Grandma took some getting used to. Her house always smelled like lavender. She kept feeding us like food could somehow fix the pain. Alyssa barely touched her meals at first. She just moved food around her plate while Grandma watched, trying not to look heartbroken. School wasn't easy either. Word got out about why we were living there. Some kids were others whispered. I overheard one mom saying we probably made it all up for attention. Another said no real mother would cover up something like that. No one knew about the flash drive yet. Alyssa had to redo senior year. She didn't complain, just drove herself every day in Grandma's old car. I'd see her in the hallway, shoulders tense, eyes down, hugging her books like armor. If a guy got too close, she'd stiffen. If a teacher raised their voice, she'd flinch. Meanwhile, the prosecution was building the case. Jonathan, the DA, had everything printed into massive binders, photos, audio transcripts, medical files. Seeing it all laid out like that made it feel even more real than living through it. Uncle Glenn's lawyer tried to get the evidence tossed, said it was gathered illegally. The judge shut that down hard. The recordings, crystal clear. Uncle Glenn's voice saying things that made even the court reporter look sick. Mom's voice, agreeing to keep it quiet. Dad threatening Alyssa if she told. Then the real circus started. My parents got separate lawyers and turned on each other fast. Mom said Dad forced her to stay quiet. Dad said Mom invited Glenn in. By the end of the first week, their lawyers must have told them to shut up, because they stopped talking to the press. Back at Vanessa's office, we practiced our testimony. She played the defense, firing off awful questions. Why didn't you tell someone sooner? If Alyssa wasn't sick, why'd she hurt herself? How do we know the recordings weren't faked? Each one felt like getting punched in the chest, but Vanessa said it was better to be ready than surprised. Alyssa started seeing a real therapist twice a week, someone who specialized in trauma. She'd come home drained, red-eyed, but little by little, I saw it. She started eating again, listening to music. One time, she even laughed when I tripped over Grandma's cat. The defense tried to dig up dirt on both of us. They found out I failed a history test and claimed I was an attention seeker. They pulled every time Alyssa got in trouble in school, trying to prove she was just violent and manipulative, like our parents had said. But Vanessa, she was ready for all of it. Then, 2 months before the trial, Alyssa got accepted to community college. Just part-time, just a few classes, but it meant something. She picked social work, said she wanted to help kids like us. Grandma cried happy tears and baked a cake. It felt weird to celebrate anything, but we did. More evidence kept surfacing. Other families came forward. Families who'd used the same facility. Turns out, intensive isolation therapy was their go-to method. Locking kids in rooms for days, silencing, just like they tried with Alyssa. They drugged the kids to keep them quiet. Parents paid extra for staff to look away. The entire facility was rotten to the core. Uncle Glenn tried to cut a deal. His lawyer reached out, offering to plead guilty to lesser charges. Vanessa, she literally laughed. We had him on tape. We had photos Alyssa risked everything to take. We had my testimony about the night he came into my room. He wasn't walking away from this. Our parents kept trying to contact us. Letters showed up at Grandma's, full of apologies and excuses. They said they were just trying to protect the family, that things got out of hand, that they loved us and wanted us to come home. Grandma burned every single one of them in the fireplace. The trial started on a Wednesday in April. The courthouse was massive, stone cold, intimidating. Reporters swarmed the steps, but Vanessa slipped us in a side entrance. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. I sat between Grandma and Alyssa, trying not to throw up. Opening statements were brutal. The prosecution laid it all out. The abuse, the cover-up, the isolation, the recordings. Jonathan, the prosecutor, was relentless, methodical, piece by piece. The defense tried to paint us as unstable girls who invented everything. Said the recordings were taken out of context. Said Alyssa's self-harm proved she was unwell. Then they played the first tape. Mom started sobbing, ugly, guttural sobs. The judge called a recess. I wanted to feel something, but all I could think about was Alyssa, locked in that room, taking beatings meant for me. While Mom knew, Alyssa testified first. She was steady, clear, stronger than I'd ever seen her. She told them everything about Uncle Glenn's visits, about Mom's threats, about hurting herself just to get sent away so he wouldn't come for me. The defense tried to rattle her. They failed. Day 3 was my turn. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely raise them for the oath. But then I looked at Alyssa. She gave me the smallest nod, and that was enough. I told them everything. Finding the diary, the night in my room, the flash drive in the treehouse, the phone, the way our parents got ahead of every adult we tried to trust. The defense asked why I didn't speak up sooner. I told them about Mrs. Annika, how my parents warned her before I ever walked into that office. They asked why I believed Alyssa over mom and dad. I said because Alyssa bled for me. She took beatings for me. She lost everything trying to keep me safe. Parents are supposed to protect you, not protect the people who hurt you. Then Uncle Glenn took the stand. Big mistake. He claimed it was all consensual, said Alyssa had come on to him, but the recordings wrecked him. His voice, threatening a 15-year-old, talking about visiting me next. Even his own lawyer looked like he wanted to throw up. Mom testified that she was scared of Dad, said she had no choice. But the email said otherwise. Her voice cold, calm on the recordings, telling Glenn to be more careful, requesting more isolation therapy, searching online for how to handle troubled teens who lie. Dad tried to claim he didn't know, that he thought Alyssa was making it up. But there was audio him telling Glenn to keep it quiet, promising to deal with Alyssa if she got in the way. His own words buried him. The facility director testified under immunity. He laid it all out, how they operated, how parents paid big money to have their problem kids broken, isolation, drugs, punishment. And our parents, they requested the harshest treatment possible. Then came the character witnesses, teachers who noticed something was off but were told Alyssa was just moody, neighbors who heard screaming but believed the excuses, friends' parents who saw red flags but didn't want to interfere. All of them said the same thing: we should have done something. Vanessa brought in trauma experts. They explained why Alyssa hurt herself, why she didn't run, why she stayed quiet and protected me instead. They talked about trauma bonding, how abusers isolate their victims, and how being silenced by those meant to protect you does lasting damage. Then the medical examiner took the stand. She walked through Alyssa's injuries, talked about how the explanations didn't match, scars in places you can't reach easily, injuries that screamed repeated abuse, not self-harm. All of it matched the flash drive. All of it confirmed Alyssa's truth. Closing arguments took a full day. Jonathan went through everything, step by step. He played the tape of Uncle Glenn saying, "I'll visit Lena next," showed the photos of Alyssa's wounds, read the emails from Mom, made it impossible to ignore. The defense was desperate, said we were coached, said the evidence was doctored, said Alyssa was sick, and I was just caught in her delusion. But they had nothing to explain the recordings, nothing to explain the payments, nothing to explain the bruises, the drugs, the locked door, nothing that made sense, unless they had something to hide. The jury deliberated for 2 long days. 2 days of pacing, Grandma's living room, 2 days of silence and waiting, of holding our breath, and then verdict day. We sat in the courtroom, holding hands. Guilty on all counts, for Uncle Glenn. Guilty of child endangerment for Mom. Guilty of conspiracy for Dad. Guilty of failing to protect us. Guilty of covering up abuse. Guilty of paying to have Alyssa tortured into silence. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Glenn got 25 years. Mom got 12. Dad got 50. The facility director got 9 years. The place was shut down. All the kids were either sent home or transferred to real treatment centers. Some finally got help. Others were already too broken. After the trial, reporters came knocking. Vanessa handled them while we went straight home with Grandma. Alyssa slept for 17 hours. I sat by her bed and watched her breathe, for the first time really understanding the weight she carried all those years. She was Atlas, holding up the sky so it wouldn't crush me. We stayed with Grandma for good. She let us paint our rooms whatever colors we wanted. Bought Alyssa a guitar the moment she mentioned wanting to learn. Let me get a dog even though she was allergic. She spent the rest of her life trying to make up for what she didn't see, even when we told her it wasn't her fault. Alyssa did become a social worker. It took her 6 years to finish college. The trauma hit her in waves. Some semesters, it knocked her flat, but she kept going. Now she works with kids no one else believes. She sees the signs others miss. She knows what to ask, what to look for. She saves them, the same way she saved me. As for me, I became a teacher, elementary school. I wanted to be the kind of adult who notices, who listens, who asks the hard questions, who doesn't dismiss bruises or silence or sudden fear. I teach kids that secrets that hurt are never secrets worth keeping. We don't talk to most of our extended family anymore. They picked their side, and it wasn't ours. But we built a new family. Friends who feel like sisters, mentors who became like mothers, people who believed us from the beginning, people who never wavered. Because family, it's not blood, it's who shows up when it counts. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still hear that lock click in my sleep. Alyssa still flinches when someone moves too fast. We both still go to therapy. We both take meds. We both have days when everything feels too heavy. But we're alive. We're here. We're free. The last time I saw my parents was at sentencing. They looked smaller, older. They tried to catch my eye, maybe hoping for something. Forgiveness. Maybe. But I didn't look at them. I looked at Alyssa, at my sister who took the beatings meant for me, who bled to protect me, who gave up everything so I wouldn't have to. That's what love is. Not letters after your call, not empty apologies. Uncle Glenn died in prison 4 years into his sentence. Another inmate. That's all they said. We didn't go to the funeral. Didn't cry. Didn't feel much at all. It was like tossing out something rotten. The smell lingers a little, but eventually the fresh air wins. Alyssa got married last year. Small ceremony. Just friends. Just chosen family. She picked a good one. Someone kind. Someone who understands why she keeps the lights on. Why she checks the locks twice. Why she can't handle certain movies or sounds. He loves her anyway. Maybe because of her strength. I'm in grad school now, studying child psychology. I want to understand more how trauma works. How to help the kids like us. My thesis, it's on siblings in abusive homes. How older siblings become shields. How that shapes them. How that trauma echoes across a lifetime. Alyssa reads every draft. Leaves comments in the margins. Adds what I miss. We text every day. Not deep stuff. Just check-ins. Memes. Dog photos. Work rants. Normal sister stuff. The kind we never got to have growing up. We're making up for lost time. It's different now. But it's ours. Last week was the anniversary of the day she came home from the facility. We don't usually mark it. But this year felt different. We met for lunch, just the two of us. No big talk. No speeches. But we both remembered. Both grateful. She brought Trolli sour crawlers. The tropical kind I love. We sat in her car, eating them. Faces puckering from the sour coating. And for a few minutes we weren't survivors. We weren't broken or brave or complicated. We were just sisters. Laughing. Eating candy. Like we should have been able to do all along. That's the thing about trauma. It doesn't go away. It lives in your bones. It colors how you see the world. But it doesn't get to define you. Alyssa taught me that. She showed me how to be strong. How to fight. How to keep record. How to speak up. Even when no one wants to hear it. How to survive when the people meant to protect you become the ones you fear most. We're okay now. Not perfect. Not fully healed. But okay. We have good days. And hard ones. And days where we forget. Just for a little while. We have lives. We have people who love us. We have each other. Which is what got us through all of it. Two sisters against the world. And the world didn't win. I still play dumb sometimes. Hard habit to break. But now I know when it's time to stop pretending. When to speak up. When to show what I know. When to protect someone else. Just like Alyssa protected me. The youngest child who saw everything and finally learned when to tell.